Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive deep into a single, highly impactful sentence that really captures a sudden, seismic geopolitical shift between the United States and Iran. Now, you might be wondering how global events can turn on an absolute dime, but they do, and it's genuinely fascinating. So let's just jump right in and unpack exactly how this all went down.
What is truly wild here is just the sheer velocity of this pivot. I mean, one moment, the trajectory of two nations is totally locked onto military conflict, right? And then, in the very next breath, that path is completely abandoned to pursue a radically different direction. It's kind of like the ultimate geopolitical U-turn. You have a strike canceled, a crisis seemingly averted, and just this massive shift in momentum.
So let's break down exactly how this unfolded, starting with part one, the aborted military strike.
Now, the crucial takeaway here really boils down to a single word, and that word is massive. This was U.S. President Donald Trump's exact description of the planned strikes on Iran. He didn't say targeted, he didn't say limited. The very specific choice of the word massive emphasizes the sheer gravity and the overwhelming scale of what was literally about to happen. It sets an incredibly high-stakes stage for this whole event.
The reality of the situation was, well, it was stark. We had a fully planned military operation, one described by the president himself as massive, that was suddenly and abruptly called off. The machinery for a major conflict was already in motion, and then it just simply stopped.
Right. So, with the escalation stopped, we move right into part two, the pivot to diplomatic talks.
The immediate result of all this is that new diplomatic talks with Iran are officially scheduled to begin on Monday. And I want to emphasize that. Not next month, not after a long period of back-channel whispers, but Monday. This highlights a really fascinating dynamic. When you narrowly avoid a military conflict, the urgency to establish a diplomatic channel absolutely skyrockets. The sheer speed of this transition from a canceled military strike straight to a formally scheduled meeting is honestly pretty remarkable.
Which naturally brings us to part three. What comes next? Let's take a look at how these rapid-fire events synthesize on the global stage. If we look at the rapid progression of these events, it almost gives you geopolitical whiplash. In the past, which, by the way, was only moments ago in diplomatic terms, we had massive strikes planned. The tension was at its absolute peak, but then came the shift. Those strikes are called off. A sudden vertical drop in escalation. And immediately following that, Monday brings new talks. It is a direct, incredibly fast sequence, from planned military action to a sudden halt, leading straight into a diplomatic meeting room.
We basically have the two extreme ends of international relations sitting right side by side. On one side, escalation, the very real threat of planned, massive strikes. On the other side, diplomacy, new talks scheduled for Monday. By contrasting these two paths, we can see just how razor-thin the line really is between severe escalation and pulling up a seat at the diplomatic table. It's a fragile juxtaposition for sure, and this situation crossed that line in record time.
All of this leaves us with a pretty critical question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Will Monday's talks succeed, or is the threat of massive strikes merely delayed? The shift toward diplomacy was definitely sudden, but as we've seen from looking so closely at this timeline, it's also incredibly fragile. The groundwork for escalation is already laid, making the stakes from Monday's talks higher than ever. It's a deeply fascinating and tense situation, for sure. Thank you so much for joining me to break this all down today, and definitely keep your eyes on how this fragile diplomatic pivot actually unfolds.